Across Australia this week, fuel prices have jumped up sharply again. In Sydney and Melbourne, for instance, we've seen increases of 30 to 50 cents per litre in just a few days. And outside the capitals, the gap is even wider. In regional areas, for instance, prices are like 2 to 6 cents higher on average. And in some remote locations, 30 to 50 cents more again. And it's not just price. We're now seeing supply disruption on a huge scale. Shipments are delayed. Stations are running low in some areas. I drove past a station in a metro area. It was closed, pumps empty. This isn't a normal price cycle. It's a supply shock. And for many businesses in Australia, this isn't just a headline story. It's a real cost that's hitting the P&L immediately. But most companies are still pricing like the market is stable. Many are just still debating whether they should do something about this additional cost. And that gap right there is where margin is being lost. Hello and welcome. I'm Joanna Wells, founder of Taylor Wells Advisory, and we focus on helping organisations improve margin through better pricing strategy. Now, in today's session, this isn't going to be about long-term strategy. No, it's going to be about what CEOs need to do this week. Now, today we've learnt that Iran has refused the 15-point ceasefire plan from the US. This has created even more instability in the global stock markets. And we're seeing just global disruption flowing directly across the world, and that's impacting Australian businesses as well. Now, the conflict in the Middle East has disrupted key shipping routes, including the Strait of Hormuz, which carries a significant portion of the world's fuel. And that's flowing through quickly. Fuel prices are rising, shipments are being delayed or redirected. And Australia is particularly exposed. We import most of our refined fuel, and many businesses are being bought in US dollars and euros. So even when nothing changes operationally, costs still move on. And they're not moving gradually, they're moving in steps and faster than most pricing processes can respond. But here's what's really interesting. Most leadership teams in Australia are still asking the same question. What price increase should we take? But is that the right question to ask in this environment? I think it's the wrong question. The real issue here isn't the price increase itself. It's how that decision is being made. In many businesses, cost structures aren't current. FX isn't fully reflected in cost structures. Commodities aren't tracked closely or even at all, and decisions are based on fundamentally internal costs and historical data. In some cases, cost inputs are 7 to 9 months old before a business takes an increase. But as we already know, in that time, costs have already moved on, especially today. So what happens? The increase is set too low and it's implemented way too late. So even when prices go up, margin doesn't recover. I'm seeing that right now in the waste industry. One of our clients operates a high capex business, large fleet, high fuel exposure, and tight margins. Now, as fuel prices have moved recently, their costs have shifted almost day by day. And their pricing really wasn't set up to move that way. It was set up for more stable markets. So what's happening now? They're absorbing more of that cost increase. And at first, it didn't seem to be a big issue. It looked manageable. People thought, oh, well, the crisis will end. Things will change. There'll be peace. But that's not happening. So what's happening financially? Margin costs are compounding, margins declining, and now at an accelerated rate. And the issue really isn't margin anymore. It's become a question of sustainability. And this is the shift most companies haven't made. They are still pricing on a schedule. They still think they are in a stable market. They are not. There are annual reviews when costs are increasing this quickly. Planned increases, long lead times, but costs are no longer moving on a schedule like this. They're moving continuously, day by day, and most B2B businesses still adjust pricing annually. Or I'm hearing maybe we'll do it twice a year, as if that's a big breakthrough. Let's think about this. Your costs are moving monthly, weekly, and I've just explained daily when it comes to fuel. So there's a gap. Costs are moving quickly, prices are moving slowly, and that gap is when your margin is fundamentally disappearing. So here's the question for leaders. Are you setting prices based on how the market used to move or how it's moving right now? And how quickly can you respond when things change? In many businesses today, pricing decisions are very, very slow. Cost inputs are fundamentally outdated, and teams really are firefighting and reacting after the fact rather than anticipating and leading on the front foot. And that creates a compounding effect. You underestimate the increase, you delay the timing, and what happens? Well, costs continue to move. And so margins erode without a single obvious decision. So what should CEOs do this week? Let me make this practical and simple. From what I've seen, the companies managing this well, right now today, are doing things differently from most other businesses. They're not debating fuel every time it moves. They've already built it into pricing, often as a separate line item linked to an index with clear rules. So when fuel moves, pricing moves. They're not relying on historical cost data alone. They're tracking what's happening now by commodities, FX, and key inputs. And in some cases, they're using forward views. They are not smoothing increases across the product portfolio. They're being much more precise. They're not relying on legacy contracts. They've built in new clauses. They've built new mechanisms that allow pricing to move. They're preparing customers early and explaining the rules before the outcome. But it's not as simple as just passing everything through. I've seen businesses try that and lose volume very, very quickly. So the goal isn't just pass through, it's controlled pass through. I was speaking with a CFO recently who said, we could have achieved the same result that you did with a simple 5% blanket increase. But that's not what we did when we helped this client. We actually segmented the increase by customer, by product, by channel, by cost exposure. And what happened? We recovered margin safely. Passing through costs is easy. Well, if you use a blanket cost increase approach. But passing them through across hundreds of thousands of SKUs and without losing customers is the real skill. In unstable markets, margin is lost fundamentally in the gap between cost movement, pricing decisions, and time. This isn't about reacting to global events, it's about recognizing that the market has changed. And pricing needs to change with it. In stable markets, pricing is planned. But right now, pricing needs to be planned, but also managed in real time. There are two very significant outcomes from this disruption at the moment. Either your pricing keeps up with your costs or your margin funds the difference. So if there's one thing to do right now, bring your cost position forward today if you can. Because if you don't, you'll be making pricing decisions based on costs that no longer exist. And if you forward project 2 weeks, if this continues, you'll set prices too low, you'll move too late, and you'll absorb the difference. And once that margin is gone, you just don't get it back. And if your business runs on slower cycles, long lead times, legacy pricing schedules, annual contracts, etc., that risk is even higher. Because by the time your pricing moves, your costs will have already moved again. You don't just absorb one increase, you absorb multiple. That's how margin is lost. Slowly at first, and then all at once. If this episode was useful, feel free to share it with someone in your team who's dealing with these types of challenges right now. Pricing decisions don't sit in one function, they sit across the business. Pricing teams and whoever's dealing with these types of pricing challenges need all the help they can get. If you or they would like more insights and help and advice, feel free to follow along or connect with me. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Joanna Wells, founder of Taylor Wells Advisory, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Goodbye.